had $40,000 a month in mortgage payments to make, and I couldn't sell the properties. I couldn't rent them for enough to cover the mortgage payment, and all those property values like cratered. I started to fall behind on payments, car loans. I started to learn, oh, wow, if you're 2 months behind, the repo guy is going to show up at your door, and the kids are like, Dad, who's this guy here? He's here to take the car.
Welcome to Elevate Utah. I'm Court Brady, and we have Leo Kanell on the podcast today. So pumped to have you.
Going to be awesome, man. Excited to be here.
It is going to be awesome. You have started like 7 different companies, and you currently are the founder and CEO of 7 Figures Funding, and you guys are the go-to for helping businesses that need capital. I just want to start at the beginning, all the way back. Like, you went to school, you went to the U. You mentioned that, how many siblings?
Oldest of 9.
Oldest of 9, and how many went to the U?
All 9 of us.
And your parents?
My parents, too.
And do you have any nieces or nephews that have gone to BYU and messed up the whole streak?
Yeah.
You
a lot of my cousins, it's funny, when I was growing up, I was like a BYU football fan, and they were Utah fans, and then I went to Utah, and they went to BYU. So it was kind of funny how that worked out. And now their kids have been going to BYU. But my oldest started at Utah, and he just transferred to BYU, too.
So he was the first one to, like...
He's the first one
that's
really crossed over. Yeah, my parents are very concerned.
And he's still part of the family?
Oh, yeah.
Not exiled?
Yeah, we root for both schools.
Okay, fair enough.
Because my wife is a big BYU fan.
Okay. So I need to know, like, you've been an entrepreneur your entire life?
Yeah, it's funny. I've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs like you have, and I always say there's 2 types, right? There's type 1 that was going door to door, had the baseball cards, maybe did the newspaper route, and was born and bred to always be an entrepreneur. And then type 2 went conventional, got the good grades, went to school, and then maybe started out in corporate America, and at some point realized, actually, I want to do my own thing and start my own company and have my own, license for freedom. And so for me, I was that second type, right? I got the good grades. I actually wasn't super entrepreneurial growing up in school. My third child, he's very entrepreneurial. Like, he's been doing door-to-door stuff since he was 10, running his own little businesses. But when I went to school, I was in this class, and this guy comes in, and he's like, hey, that piece of paper is great, but it's not going to mean much without experience. And he was doing an internship to teach people how to do a house painting business. And I'm not a good painter, but I said, hey, that sounds cool. 50 of us went to a conference room by the airport, and then we started these house painting businesses, and that was my first jump into entrepreneurship. I'm like, I like this. I like being able to manage time, not have a limit on how much money I can make, and be able to have happy clients. And that's when I'm like, I got to be an entrepreneur.
This is an undergrad.
This is an undergrad.
Got it. So did you open up? Did you start doing house painting? Was that your first business?
That was my first business.
You started it. So he showed you how to do it, and then you started it.
He showed us how to do it, and then it was kind of like a franchise opportunity where, hey, we're going to give you the business model. Here's the McDonald's system here. Follow it for house painting. We're going to take a cut, and we'll be there to support you if you need help. And then it's like, it's March in Utah, and it's raining and snowing, and I'm going door to door in Park City and in Bountiful and convincing people, hey, I know this is your most important asset here probably, but I'm going to take care of it for you and make it look beautiful, even though I've never painted a home in my life. And that was my first jump into it, and it was a great learning experience.
So what's the difference between entrepreneurship and 100% commission sales jobs?
Well, I'd say the biggest difference, right, if you're a 100% sales job, and a lot of entrepreneurs do this, right? And we serve a lot of them. They're solopreneurs, and they want to just have the freedom and do their own thing. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, right, you're going to build a team. And you're going to go on vacation and still make money. You're going to be sleeping and still making money because you have a business and a team and technology that you're leveraging. It's not just a one-man person. Now, with AI, you can have smaller teams and more money per employee, but it still comes down, I think, to building something that's more sustainable versus 100% commission where, it's still dependent on you 100%.
Do you see the landscape of entrepreneurship changing? You mentioned AI with that advent, that there's going to be less team building, more solopreneurs.
Well, it's an opportunity for more solopreneurs, but you still are going to need teams and people to manage it, right? So with one of our campaigns with Instagram, it's a DM direct messaging campaign, and people respond. And so I had one of our guys who was responding to those, and we recently put the AI text bot on, and our cost per book call just got cut in half. He's still managing it, but now instead of having to hire 5 of him, I can keep 1 of him, and he knows what to do. but the AI can now do the work of 5, 10 people, and it's 24 hours, and it can talk to 20, 30 people at the same time versus one human being just doing one. And so you still, I think you're still going to want to have a team, but it will probably be a lot smaller team. And so it's one of those things where I think you just, everyone who's worried about, job loss disruption, learn how to work the AI, and you're going to be in good shape.
It's a massive accelerant.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first team that you built in whatever company you had your first team in.
Well, there was the house painting business, and I found some great painters. Luckily, I spoke Spanish because I did a Mormon mission in South America. So that was my first team. But after that, my first real company that I started after that was a mortgage company just down the street here in Draper. And I was 25 years old, and we had 30, 40, 50-year-old loan officers. And we hired them and said, hey, we're going to provide leads, but you can also make a lot more if you bring in your own deals. And so we had this unique structure. And that was the first time that I built a team. And we had, all these different people and managing accountability and KPIs and all those different things that when you were a 100% commission loan officer, which is what I started out as, you didn't have to do that. And so that was my first jump into building a team.
Tell me about your first, I call it the fetal position in the shower moment. Elon Musk says, chewing on glass, staring into the abyss. What was your first moment where you're like, this dude was like painting this rosy picture of entrepreneurship, and I went and did houses, and then I did mortgage, and I was like, why didn't I just go get a traditional job? Like, this is so freaking hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it still happens to this day, right? It still happens to this day, and you still wonder, red pill, blue pill, I take the right one. At the end of the day, I always know I did because you have that freedom to live the life, and I'd rather work 100 hours a week for myself versus 40 for someone else. But I think back to that, and maybe the first when it really happened, I was investing a lot in real estate properties, and this was before 2008-9, and then when the Great Recession hit, and I had $40,000 a month in mortgage payments to make, and I couldn't sell the properties, I couldn't rent them for enough to cover the mortgage payment, and all those property values cratered literally within a period of months. All these lenders were going out of business. That was the first time I was definitely in the fetal position.
Walk me through that. Were you married? Did you have kids?
Married, 2 kids.
How much debt did you have?
Millions of dollars in debt, and all the equity had just evaporated. It went from a positive multi-million-dollar net worth to a negative multi-million-dollar net worth in a matter of months. And so that was crazy. When did
it hit? What was the conversation with your wife like? Give me, I want the details.
Yeah. No, I remember it. I started to fall behind on payments, car loans. I started to learn, oh wow, if you're 2 months behind, the repo guy is going to show up at your door, and the kids are like, Dad, who's this guy here? He's here to take the car. I'm like, oh, that's not good. So yeah, it was a terrible situation. And for me, it was a learning situation. And, in the moment, you didn't see this, but over time, what I realized was I hadn't reached out to mentors. I hadn't read the books. I look at books here. You got on the wall here. You got the Lean Startup, Good to Great, Mamba Mentality. I've read all of these books. But in my 20s, as a young entrepreneur, I didn't. I don't know why I was so dumb. I think someone said it really well. If it was Gary Vaynerchuk or who it was, but somebody said, listen, you think you're humble, you're actually not unless you're reaching out for help, learning from mentors. And in today's world, you don't even have to meet them, right? I had invested in a bunch of programs and products with Patrick Bet-David long before I ever met him and had a chance to speak at an event and sponsor it where he was the keynote speaker. But I knew everything about him, and he knew that when I sat down and spoke with him. And in today's world, you don't have to have an in-person mentor. You can have that mentor that's making a huge difference, listening to their podcast, watching their videos on YouTube, and then actually investing in those programs and those seminars. And so when I was failing and my real estate investments went south, there were mentors and people that I could have been speaking to and programs I could have been investing in, and I could have learned from their mistakes instead of having to go through that school of hard knocks. And so that was my big takeaway from that period of time. And then as I started over and started focusing on, all right, I'm going to get this next business off the ground as real estate, really tanked there for a minute. Then I said, well, I need capital. I need financing. And I went to the bank there where I'd been for a decade, all my money, all my car loans, everything paid off, good credit with them. and I couldn't get a dime for the business. And I said, wow, this is a big problem. I wonder who else is dealing with this.
Hence, that was the evolution.
That was the birth.
Into...
That was the birth of, wow, there's got to be, how can you qualify for financing for a new business? And before 08, 09, it was much easier. You could walk into a bank and walk out with a business line of credit for 50 grand very quickly and easily. And after, in 2010, 11, 12, it was much more difficult. And it's still pretty difficult today if you don't have the right systems and know the ways you can qualify for financing. And so I started to dig into it and got obsessed. Well, how can you get $100,000 if you're starting a new business? If you're 18 years old, here's a $100,000 student loan court. Go study French literature, and for sure you're probably not going to be able to get a job and pay that student loan back, but here's $100 grand, no problem, right? But if you want to start a new business and you have all this experience in the industry and field, hey, can I get $50,000 for the new business? Well, unless you've got a 401k with $50,000 that's 100% collateral, it's going to be very difficult if you don't know the way to do it. And so that's what I went all in with, is how can I figure out how to finance my business and then help some friends and family do the same for theirs, and then realized, wow, there's actually a really big need for this type of service across the country.
I have so many thoughts that I want to comment on these, but I'm fascinated where this is going, and I want to tell me exactly who it is that you serve, how you serve them, how quickly do they get their money, what are the terms. If someone's listening to this, they're like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I have an idea. I want a business. I need some capital. Walk us through who's your ideal customer and how do you help them out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think a lot of people, if you really have a customer that you want to serve, you know exactly who they are. I give that guy, his name is Bob, and Bob is 35, and he's got 2 kids, and he and his wife work, for corporate America, W-2 job, making, $60,000 to $80,000 a year each, and he wants to start a business. She's going to keep the job. He's got like $25,000 in maxed out credit cards. He went to the bank. He got turned down for the SBA loan because he didn't have collateral, and he didn't have 2 years of profitable business taxes, which is kind of like the egg before the hen and all that. And so for me, that's when I come in. I'm like, all right, Bob, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you a loan. We're going to pay your credit cards down. We're going to boost your credit score 50 points. And now you're going to qualify for our 0% interest business card stack program. We're going to get you $80,000 to $100,000 in the name of the business. And the difference is when you go to the bank and ask for that $80,000, they're going to say no unless you have the collateral and the financials to back it up. And for us, I'm going to take you to 4 lenders or 5 lenders each that give you $15,000 to $20,000, and that's how we're going to get that money. And I know the right lenders to go to in the right order. And so 75% of the clients that we serve are starting a new business. Maybe they are starting an e-commerce business, and they have a new product that they're importing or they're manufacturing for cheap somewhere, and then they're going to sell it online. Or maybe they are a digital marketer, and they're building that digital marketing brand, and they know they need a bunch of money to advertise and get some of their initial clients. Or maybe they are, a real estate investor, and to get those deals locked down, they need money to wholesale it, to get the property under contract, to do the fix and flip, the rehab project. And so those are some of the clients that we focus on serving. But ultimately, what we realized is this magic concept called the Dream 100. You ever heard of this?
The Dream 100, yeah.
Yes.
Are you referring to, well, I think I'm thinking of it in a different context. Tell me your Dream 100.
Okay, so Dream 100 has a background with Tony Robbins' business partner, Chet Holmes.
Okay.
And Chet Holmes was working for one of Warren Buffett's business partner, Charlie Munger's magazine businesses back in the day. And they're like, hey, you're supposed to sell advertising. That's how we make money. You're in charge of sales. Here is a list of 2,000 potential businesses that might, advertise in the magazine. And Chet Holmes is like, so I just called 2,000, and it seems pretty ineffective. There's got to be a better way. So he did the research, and he whittled it down to, the top 100 by 90% of all the ads. So why am I going to spend my time with the other 1,900 that account for 10% when I can focus on my Dream 100 that have all the business? And so for us, we started out where we were advertising to the business owner and bringing in one business owner at a time. And then we transitioned to, what if we had a really great referral partner network of business coaches, consultants, trainers, accountants, bookkeepers who already have our dream clients, and we could build a relationship, serve them, and at the same time be serving their clients, which helps them to be able to invest and grow and be able to work with those strategic referral partners. And so that's been our focus in serving them by serving their client who are business owners.
I love it. It was the same Dream 100 that I was thinking of.
Okay, cool.
You articulated it much better than I would have, so I'm glad you did. So as I'm listening to this, if I'm listening, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I can go get money. It's going to be easier, less friction. Can't get it at my bank. Okay, what's the catch? Like, what's the interest rate? What's the personal liability? How do you hedge all of your risk? Because these are riskier loans because there's nothing collateralized and because there isn't 2 years of bank statements. Presumably riskier loans. What's the catch?
So the catch is obviously it depends on where you're at, right? If you are an established business owner and you need financing, we're going to work with lenders who are going to pay us a commission. And what we do though is we have an offer that they can't refuse. Number one, we guarantee the best funding that exists and that they qualify for. Because the big objection or concern most people have if you're a business owner is like, how do I know that what you're going to offer me isn't just what makes you the most amount of money? I want what would be the very best option for me and my business and the most affordable option. And that's what we can guarantee them, because oftentimes the alternative is what's called a merchant cash advance loan.
Yeah.
And we don't like those. They're a very last resort option and should be very rarely used. These merchant cash advance loans are 6 to 12 months, daily payments Monday through Friday, and you might be paying rates of 30 to 50%. They're not technically an interest rate because they're a payment factor rate, but they're extremely expensive.
That's how they get around the usury clauses.
And to me, it's like crack cocaine. Once you get on that train, it's really difficult to get off because of the business owner. You're struggling with cash flow, and the only way you can make ends meet is to continuously take those out, but it just destroys your equity and your cash flow ultimately over time, and you can never get off that.
So what's the structure if they work with you guys?
The structure with us is we're going to use creative financing and get longer-term loans, replace a merchant cash advance with business credit cards, and then get them fundable enough to where they can actually qualify for that SBA loan. They have to actually have good business credit now, a Dun & Bradstreet score, a Paydex score, and once they have that 80 Paydex score and they have better financials, then they can qualify for SBA. And so we're going to get them a much better, more affordable option and improve their personal credit score, because most new and small business owners are going to commingle using personal credit and personal finance to fund their business. And when they learn that they can separate those out and get them the funding in the name of the business versus using a personal credit card, that's a big differentiator, and it helps their credit and improves their financial situation. And so that's a lot of what we do, is how can we educate and empower you? I don't know about you, Court, but I've asked this question to 100,000 entrepreneurs. Did you learn a lot about credit in high school or college?
From my parents.
Okay, you learned from your parents, right? You had great parents. Well, school still doesn't teach a lot about credit. And the only thing I remember is walking around college and there was an Amex on every corner that you could sign up for, and you were all getting a 25% interest rate, and that's not a very good way to educate kids about credit and how it works. And so one of the biggest things that we do is everybody who even applies for financing, we give them free access to our Credit College platform so they can learn about the 5 factors that generate their credit score, so they can learn how to separate their business and personal finances so that they are truly separate, and you build business credit here and you don't weigh down personal credit and commingle that. And so a lot of what we do is how can we educate and empower you, teach you to be more smart with the money and the financing that you use so that you can succeed.
Do you guys offer SBA financing?
All 50 states.
So this is I love this business model. You guys are reaching down the value chain in this business owner's journey in their life. The bank is sitting up here saying, hey, you get me the 2 years, you get profitability, you get some assets under your belt, and then we're going to give you an SBA loan. You can say, hey, you guys are stuck here. Yeah, like that's great. We still do SBA, but you're stuck working the corporate job, making $80,000 a year. You have $25,000 in credit card debt. Let me help you. You have this idea. You have this vision. Let me help you with those tasks. And then you've won them over. They're loyal to you guys. They want to work with you. I love that. Such a cool business model. So I'm going to rewind back in the conversation. You've mentioned 2008 hit, and you're like, dude, I haven't read these books. I haven't reached out to mentors. I was paying a large, you didn't call it this, but an ignorance tax when 2008 happened. I'm curious, so that pain caused you to switch. What was your new operating system? Like, would you start reading? What conferences did you start going to? If somebody's emerging into the entrepreneur space and they're like, I'm going to pay the ignorance tax because I don't know what I'm doing. Where would you tell them to start based on what you did and what worked?
Yeah. So ultimately, what it actually comes down to is developing values and principles, right? Because there are values and principles. There's common denominators. They say success leaves clues. Tony Robbins talks about it all the time. And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's some key books that they've read. Maybe it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those are two really great foundational books. Those were the first two books that I started out with, and then started jumping into what can I learn about sales from guys like Grant Cardone, who have dedicated their entire life. What can I learn about marketing and sales funnels from someone like Russell Brunson, joined his mastermind group. And so just jumping in and learning all these different things. What can I learn about leadership from someone like John Maxwell? And it's listening, it's reading for me. I was reading a lot of books and then also listening to them. No more music when I'm driving and working out. I'm always listening to a book. I'm listening to a podcast, because there is an ignorance tax that you're going to pay if you don't have these values and principles. And so as I learned from everyone who had done what I wanted to do, then I started developing certain values and principles. Among them, the very top one, if you walk into our office, and I learned actually with a previous finance company that I started that grew really fast and didn't have that foundation of values and principles. And the first one is do what you say you're going to do.
You mentioned that, so I shot you a text and said, "Hey, what's a principle that you feel passionate about that you'd like to talk about today?" You said, "Do what you say you're gonna do." You said two things: do what you say you're gonna do, and be unreasonably optimistic. We're gonna get up to both of those. Do what you say you're gonna do. Like, that sounds so simple. Why is that foundational?
Because in my experience, if you do that, you're going to be in the top 5 to 10% of any space, any industry you're a part of. Because so many companies and organizations make promises to their customers, simple things that they say they're going to do, and then they don't quite do them, or they don't quite deliver on them. They make a promise to their team that it's going to be this way with their compensation, with this, that, and the other, and then they change it 9 out of 10 times not to their advantage, and they continuously don't fulfill what they have made promises to strategic partners, customers, clients, team members, whoever it is. And so if you just start with, well, our first principle is if we say we're going to do something, then we're going to move heaven and earth to make sure we actually do. And if we don't, we're going to apologize. We're going to still make it happen. It's going to be something that we follow through with. And it can be as simple as you get on a Zoom call and you promise, I will get that email sent out by the end of the day. And I'm thinking of one I've got to send, by the end of the day, right? And if you do that and you get in that habit, like, I have to follow through. And then what's great is you can incorporate these principles at home, right? You got kids like I do. Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to call it hypocrisy if you say something, but you don't do it. And your team, I tell my team, guys, if I make a promise and don't follow through, let me know. But if you can just abide by that one principle, I mean, think of how many people you've dealt with in life and in business who said they were going to do something and just simply didn't do it.
What's the absence? It's simple to understand. I love it. Impactful. You said, I had another company that skyrocketed, and then the rug got pulled out from underneath you, or you pulled it out from yourself, your team did. What is the absence of doing what you say you're going to do?
So here's a great case study, right? A previous business finance company we started, and we got a lot of notoriety. Within 18 months, $0 to $5 million in sales. We're hiring all these employees. We're sponsoring big entrepreneur events across the country. We move into a 25,000 square foot office, which was a massive, stupid, idiotic mistake. But all of these things, we were having success, but there weren't values and principles. There wasn't a foundation. And so as I brought on some of the early employees and turned them into owners with me with the business, one of the things that would happen is they would make promises and say they were going to do something with a strategic referral partner, with our team members, our employees, and they wouldn't follow through. They would constantly promise one thing in a compensation package to an employee, and then magically, without even telling them, change it and just not follow through. And they did that over and over. And in the first year of the company, I was in charge of a lot of those things. But as we grew, I couldn't manage all of them. And as I made those delegations to my other partners, they didn't follow through with customers, with strategic referral partners, with our clients and our team members. And as that happened, like, we lost credibility immediately with our team. That was the first line of defense, right? If your team's not bought in, how can they deliver value to your clients if they're not being treated right? And so as I got to a point, literally just 2 years after starting that out of my kitchen, I'm like, I'm going to have to start over because I brought these guys in. I can't make the decisions by myself. I gave up too much control, too much equity, just a lot of mistakes there. But it started with the one that was being violated. They made promises, didn't deliver on them, and it would drive me insane. And so when I started over, and it was me and one employee in my home office in 2018, I said, that's the first rule. And every time I met with somebody that we were going to hire, I said, hey, these are the values and principles that you're going to sign a contract and live by and operate by, and we're not moving forward until you agree to do that.
You went to that degree, like you got your core values, you're signing a contract, this is who we are as a company. You didn't do that in the first one. How has that changed the trajectory of the next company?
Well, it's night and day difference, right? Because even early on, some people got maybe a better deal than they deserved with compensation structure, but I said, hey, I'm going to follow through with it. That's the promise we made. We're going to live by it, and I'll go bankrupt before I break that promise that I made to the team member, to the strategic referral partner, and to the client. And so that's been our operating principle. When you have those non-negotiable values, and this is something that I learned a lot from Patrick Bet-David and following and learning from him, is you make non-negotiable values and principles, and then if everybody lives by them, then that reputation precedes itself, and it gives you a reputation in your space. And it's not 2005 anymore, right? If you don't deliver value, if you don't follow through, well, you're going to have bad online reviews in a heartbeat. Yeah. Like, you can't hide behind that anymore, and so you have to be on top of that. Even if you do everything possible, you still can get a 1-star review from something that goes wrong, or somebody who's a little bit crazy. And so that's why you have to have that, I think, in today's world. And you see guys like Robert Glaze and others that talk about having these values and principles and defining them. But in my previous organization, I kept talking about them, but I could never get those partners to agree or even take the time to write them down and to decide what they were going to be. And ultimately, after I left, that business failed, of course, and ours has done extremely well and has that reputation, and I think the values and principles are a big part of it.
It's so interesting that you bring that up. I hired a business coach to come to my company when we were kind of stuck at a couple million in revenue, not really any profit. And so, like, where do we start? And he said, well, we start with your core values. It's like, no. I need revenue. I need profit. I need some quick wins because I'm working way too much and I'm not making anything. Like, give me a break. We're not starting on core values. So, well, people run your business. Like, we could have the best strategy in the world, but that culture is going to eat that strategy for breakfast if you don't have the right people. And you get the right people by stating what the character of your business is. Foundationally, what is the core of what your business is? So let's start with your core values. And we did that exercise, and we came up, integrity was our first one, defined further as fearless communication, and a bunch of other stuff similar to do what you're going to do. It's similar, it's tangential, core value. But I had some people in the organization like, dude, this is soft stuff. Like, this isn't important. I'm having all these meetings. Like, I could go grow the business if I weren't having all these meetings, having to figure out all this stuff. Like, it is what it is. Let's go do and stop thinking. And I love that you shared that it's long-term success. Sales is the monetization of trust. And in the long term, you're going to have way more revenue, way more profitability. If you have way more trust, it's going to be hand in hand. If I can build the trust, my perceived trust, which comes from saying hard things, making hard commitments or easy commitments, but following through on those commitments, then I have a way more successful business. Your second item was unreasonable positivity. I love that. Tell me more.
Well, back when, the 08-09 recession happened, and I thought I was this young, smart entrepreneur who hadn't read the books, who hadn't looked for mentors, who hadn't networked enough and really learned from others' mistakes, I realized that I got this cancer. And this is a cancer we see across the planet, and we especially see it online and social media. We especially see it in the media, and that is whining and complaining and focusing on problems. because we all know challenges are coming. Adversity, it's happening. Sometimes, as the CEO, you walk in and all of a sudden this flood of problems and adversity just stack up, and you're like, my gosh, this is an incredible day. We've had more problems pop up in the first hour than I can remember in the last 3 weeks, and those things happen, and we know that they're coming, and it's so easy. And so when I was failing and not learning from other mentors and entrepreneurs, one thing you'll see is you read all these great entrepreneurs out there, is I don't see a lot of them whining, I don't see a lot of them complaining, I don't see a lot of them saying life isn't fair. They're not doing any of the victim mindset that you see so prevalent, and they're not wasting time even condemning and talking negatively about other people, right? They're focused on, where is the solution to this problem? And I'm going to stay unreasonably optimistic and find the solution to that problem. And I'm not going to worry about all the stuff I can't control. I'm going to focus on what I can control. And all those things map and connect in congruence. And one of my case studies I love for this, and it's what's so great about what we do, is I remember I was on the phone with a client early on, and he needed not a ton of money, like $30,000 to get his business solution off the ground. And we had gone to a couple lenders. He was, I think, just at $13,000. I'm like, listen, I've got 2 other ones. We're going to get you well over $30,000. And he's like, no, this is not working. I just want to stop right now. And I said, hey, this is going to work out. We've got 2 more opportunities to get you above that. Stick with the process, and I promise it'll be worth it. And we did, and he ended up getting over $30,000, and his wife was super excited about it. But it was just so easy for him, and I see it, right? We see it in our customers, we see it in our team. Life is difficult and all the difficult things that we're dealing with, but if we just focus on being unreasonably optimistic and positive, and where the solutions, like you see this in media, in the newspaper, everything, and I love the Wall Street Journal, but I look at the articles and here's 99 out of 100 negative headlines, and it's just the problem. Here's the problem. Great, well, thanks for sharing it. We need to know the problem. How can we now get on the other side of it and find the solution? And that simple principle.
No, we don't want to talk about solutions. We just want to yell at each other.
Yes.
And get upset.
Yes.
Feed our anger.
Yeah. And that's what I love about How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? It's no complaining. It's no criticizing. It's no condemning. Let's just stop all that. It sure is a case study of Abraham Lincoln. And one of his generals made this huge mistake, and he had this opportunity to end the war early, and he absolutely blew it. And Abraham Lincoln was so angry, and he wrote this really long letter just chastising him and telling him he was going to fire him. And he was so upset, and he took that letter and he put it in a cabinet, because that wasn't going to solve the problem. That was not going to be, optimistic in where can we win? How can we get back on track? And after the war, after he was assassinated, they found that letter in his cabinet. He never sent it to the guy because it wasn't going to help. It wasn't going to solve the problem. Instead, he focused on, how can I find the solution? And that's part of, I think, that principle.
When you were talking, I wrote down a couple words that came to mind. First one was presence. The ability to be present, to be right here. We're in this podcast right now, and then you're going to be in your car, and then we're going to be in front of a business meeting, and then with our families. It's so easy in entrepreneurship to have our focus somewhere else. Our feet are one place, but our minds are solving problems, thinking of the negative potential outcomes. I heard this analogy of, if you're sitting there and there's an alligator in the corner of the room that you're in, you guys are in the same room, but it's just sitting there, all of your attention is going to be on that alligator. But it doesn't need to be, because when that alligator starts moving towards you, then you will get up and move. And the evidence that you're sitting there is showing you that this alligator is not a threat. When it moves and then I move, okay, there's my evidence that I need to take action. It's the same thing in business. Like, could get sued, could have this employee leave. And we're like thinking, ideating on all of it, which is making us make worse decisions in every other aspect of our business and our life. When the employee puts in their 2 weeks notice, or when you do get sued and then you respond, there's the evidence that you now need to act. And the fact that you're not acting is evidence that there's not a problem to act on. Another word that came to mind as you were talking that you alluded to is this idea of gratitude. Just being grateful. You didn't say grateful for the problems, but that's kind of what I gathered of, like, this is the journey. This is what we signed up for. Earlier on, you said, how amazing it's been to be an entrepreneur, to be on this journey. Yeah, it's hard, but I think it would be harder to sit on the sidelines and watch other people live our dreams. That'd be so painful. And then this idea of ownership, this extreme ownership where you're taking accountability for everything that's occurring in your life. I think all those things help lead to this. I had a life coach who is phenomenal. I loved to death. Had him for 2.5 years, learned so many things. Finally ended the relationship with tons of gratitude. But I realized that we were problem solving together in every single session. Every 2 weeks we would meet and I'd brainstorm, like, what's a problem? What do I need to solve? Because I would feel better. It was this dopamine hit when I would solve something. And it was this dopamine hit for him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he got to fulfill his purpose of being a coach and helping people get unstuck and work through their problems. But it was causing me to have this hyper fixation of what are the problems that we can go solve together. And it was damning my progress. It was hindering me from taking some steps in the direction that I needed to take because I was so focused on the problem instead of being focused on what are some opportunities that I can go seize and go take advantage of. I'm curious, in your opinion, when somebody becomes more present, more grateful, takes ownership, what are the outcomes that will come into their life and the timeline that they can start to expect those outcomes?
I think it's not always immediate, right? We all want instant gratification. In today's world, we're used to, jumping on DoorDash and ordering something, and 30 minutes later, there's our food while we're still in the office working. And it doesn't always happen like that in entrepreneurship. But when you can establish the values and principles you're going to live by, I'm going to be unreasonably optimistic. I'm going to be grateful for the opportunity. I already know the issues and challenges are coming. And when you can establish those, then it makes tough decisions easier to make because, well, what's our value and principle? I remember I was one of my great mentors, a guy named Bob Millerberg, used to own Crest Financial before he sold it just down the street here. I had the chance.
They're one of our customers. That's so funny.
Oh,
I
love Bob. Anyway, so we were coaching football, and both of our sons were on the same tackle football team, and I was technically the head coach, but Bob is this unique entrepreneur with so much experience in building and managing teams, and I was just a young entrepreneur at the time, and he had so much experience. So really, it was like he was the coach of the team. But I remember we were in this big game, and I'm like, what offensive play should I call? And he's like, what's our bread and butter play? What play do we know we can sit back on because we build a foundation. We know that play is going to work. Let's run that play. And I feel like when you have that bread and butter play, you know what to do when you are faced with a difficult decision as an entrepreneur. All right, we've got an employee who's having these issues. You know what? They're really talented, but you know what? They're breaking every value and principle that our company stands for. They're not following through. They're breaking promises. Even though it might hurt in the short term, we're going to probably have to let that person go because they don't fit in our values and principles. And then you look at, well, how can we make our offer better, our marketing better? What's our principle there? Oh, we want to be innovative. We want to focus on solutions. We want to do it different. That distinction is part of who we are. That's the type of solution that we want to create. And so when you're faced with these difficult decisions, now you know how to act. And then over time, you will win. And then those results will compound, those small decisions that add up to big things. And in the very beginning, you're going to be nervous. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work. And then over time, I feel like time is a big deal, right? When you have that big decision, I always like to sit on it just a few days, and then time helps me realize, yep, that's the right decision. That's the one that goes with the values and principles that we stand for. And then ultimately the results will follow. But in today's world, I will say, one book that I have in my mind, and I booked the website, is called Pivot Till You Make It. Sometimes you do have to do some pivots. And so one of the things you might find, we've gotten to a certain level. How can we get to the next level? And sometimes there is a strange pivot that comes there. And so for us, we were feeling that way. Even just 18 months ago, we were kind of feeling that way. What's the next step? How can we improve? How can we get better? And these business loan brokers kept reaching out to us. How does your system work? How do you automate underwriting? How do you get the client the best financing option? And so my partner and I were like, let's just help this one guy and see how it works. So we built it out. We didn't charge him any money, and it was helping him, and he was succeeding. And we have this law of abundance that's part of us. They're like, hey, the market's big enough. There are tens of millions of small businesses. There's no way we can serve them all, and there's not enough competition to serve them all. Maybe we can help these loan brokers. And then we ask him when it was done, well, what do you think this is worth, this software solution, our system? And he's like, I've got groups of people that would pay 25 grand a year for it. I'm like, really? So we launched that last October, and now fast forward here, it's been about 10 months, and we've got hundreds of people in our funding system helping more business owners that we wouldn't have gotten to, but they're using our system. And so there is a point where you do have to pivot, I think, sometimes to get that next step where you feel like you're stuck under a ceiling. You're not going to be able to grow the business that next step. And that's been a cool thing for us to learn.
I love that. You used two words, one word, compounding. And when I think about compounding, it's an investment, right? Investments compound. And when you make an investment, you're poor, right? Like you go and you could buy a rental property. Okay, you just wrote a check for 50 grand and you are literally poor. And then things start happening. You take those rep profits, you invest them in the next thing, you get poor, you invest in the next thing. And it's like, is this ever going to work? It actually looks like it's going in the opposite direction. But that compounding is a perfect word for the effects and the timeline that it takes for living a principle-based life to have the results that somebody wants, because it is like this 2, 3, 5, maybe 10-year process. Yeah. But at the end of that, it's your trajectory and where you're at is so different than what it otherwise would have been.
Man, that reminds me of during the pandemic.
Yeah.
The pandemic's hitting, and before the pandemic hit, we would do all these live events. So my business partner would take a bunch of our team members, and we'd go to entrepreneur events in New York City and Miami and LA, and these new business owners would need financing for their businesses, and that's what we were doing. And then the pandemic hit, and all of those were canceled. And that was like more than half of our business at the time. We're like, wow, what do we do? And so we came to the conclusion that we're going to be able to move to doing a lot of virtual events to connect up with business owners. But to do that, all of these referral partners, they needed to have a partner portal. They needed their own link and their own tracking 24/7 so that they didn't have to call and ask, hey, what's going on with this client? They could just log into that. And at the time, we just had our worst month ever, right? This is April of 2020. We're like, and we knew we needed to invest tens of thousands of dollars into this platform, and we knew we had to do it. So made the call, made the investment, built it out, and then we did our first virtual event in June of 2020. And it was funny. My business partner was at a golf tournament in St. George. I'm like, Ty, I think you should do this workshop because you have experience in e-commerce. It was an e-commerce entrepreneur group. So he puts the computer on his bed in the hotel bed, tells his buddies to be quiet there, and he thinks there's 3 people in this Zoom room. And so he's like, well, I'll just do this for practice. And he does the presentation, and I'm back at the office with some of our team. And all of a sudden, hundreds of people applied for financing because he didn't see it was being live streamed onto a Facebook group with thousands of people. And from that one event, like, we funded a bunch of people, and all of a sudden we had a new business model, but it never happens without making that investment first. And that is compounded, and we went from having a few hundred referral partners to having 10,000. So I think that's what it reminded me of as you were talking about that.
We don't know what's going to make the difference, like what's going to tip us over. You don't know which straw is going to break the camel's back. Like, when is the dam going to break and all of this is going to flood through? All that you do know is that eventually one of the straws will break the camel's back. And like the only option you have is to just keep laying them on there.
Mark Cuban says it. You just got to be right once in business, right?
Yes, because you hit that in baseball analogy, you can get a double, single, triple, or a grand slam. Yeah. But in business, you can strike out, and then you can have 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 runs because you're not constrained to the 3 bases. This has been awesome. I have one more question for you. Well, is there any question you wish I would have asked that I didn't ask, or anything else that you'd like to share before I ask this last question? This has been awesome.
You know, the one thing, whatever the question would be, I'd say, what's the best way, and I think you could answer this better than I can, but what's the best way to create not just like linear growth in your business, but like exponential growth? That would be one question I would definitely ask. Yeah,
for me to ask you? Yeah, what's your...
Well, no, I'll ask it to you, but I'll tell you what my answer would be.
Sure.
Yeah, my answer would be leveraging technology and a team. Like those are the two things that if you have a great team and great leaders on your team and you have great technology and you can put those two together, that for me has been the best way to create exponential growth in your business. Especially there's especially anything that can tie back to recurring revenue. And that was something I wish I'd have learned early on as a business owner. And I've already told my sons that. I'm like, guys, you got to get into a recurring revenue business that is constantly where you have one sale and it can be a sale month after month for years to come versus just one lump sum. And now that might be it. That was a big takeaway. But yeah, investing in technology was the compounding growth in that previous case study. And then obviously a team. Like even if you want to use a bunch of AI and technology, you still need to have a team.
I love that. My answer would be similar to yours. You use the word leverage. I think exponential and leverage go hand in hand. If anyone wants exponential instead of linear growth, it has to be based on leverage. And maybe I'd toss in a vision as well. So first, to talk about leverage, it's you leverage your team members, you leverage your money. Like compounding interest occurs when there's money being leveraged. You leverage your knowledge, you leverage your relationships, you leverage your media, your ability to sell. And what I mean by the ability to sell is you get the one sell and it continues to go and go and go with that recurring revenue. I think the vision part is extremely important as well, though, to get exponential growth. I'm listening to, it's by Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here will not get you there.
Mm-hmm.
And we get stuck in this routine and in this rut in our lives, in every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our health, but for sure our finances, where we say we had this playbook, this operating system that got us here, and we're so confident in it. So we want to keep doing that thing. But before we had that operating system, we had all of this time of learning that was the pivot until we learned that operating system. And then you leverage your team, your finances, whatever it is, to go and continue growing that. And then you find the new operating system that you'll need to adopt to hit the new vision. And the bigger your vision is, I think the more it stretches your ability to say, what is the new operating system? You had a perfect example of this with the Dream 100. Operating system number 1, we go after client. Operating system number 2, we go after referral partner affiliate. And that's that exponential growth. I'm excited to see what business operating system number 3 is for you guys. But that would be my answer to that question. It's a good question.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, vision. And when I hear vision, I even think to mission, right? Like a mission-driven business is always much more successful and has that ability for exponential growth versus one that, you kind of have an idea what you're doing. There's a vision, but there isn't a deeper mission to it. Like you think of Elon Musk and SpaceX, right? The mission is to go colonize Mars for him, but he didn't know how it was going to, generate money. But because it was such a big mission and people got behind it, they would work like 80, 90 hours a week to make that mission come to fruition. And then all out of that comes Starlink. And think how amazing that solution is. And then to put spaceships, out into space for 1/20th or 1/30th the cost of NASA because you have that big mission. That's and it starts with a vision.
Have you heard of Spin Launch before?
No.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be a little quick plug for the listening pleasure of our audience. But it's this space company that takes these massive cylinders. So think like a 10-story building. And it's like a disc on its side. Like if your Frisbee stuck in the ground and was straight up and down. And there's a tube that it launches out of the top. And they spin these ships at Mach 4, and then they launch them. So it's centrifugal force, and it launches them out into space, and they just have a tiny bit of rocket fuel at the very end to just blast them into low orbit. They go up there, do whatever they need to. But they just had a few successful launches. Now they're building a bunch of these in different parts of the world. But yeah, that vision, how do we accomplish this? And it creates, again, a new operating system. We used to use rocket fuel to get them off the ground. Now we spin rockets into space. Last question for you, Leo, is if you got to sit across from yourself 3 years from now, and your future self 3 years in the future was here, what do you think he'd tell you?
So my future self, 3 years from now, what good advice will I have for myself sitting here right now?
Yeah, if I'm your future self 3 years older than you are currently, what would I tell you?
So me of 2028.
You have 2028.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I would hope that I would be able to tell myself to worry less, think about just controlling everything that you can control, living by the right values and principles, keeping the priorities where they should be with, you talked about health, family, and yes, building wealth and building that mission with our teams. But because it is nice, like right now, the biggest thing you need as an entrepreneur is clarity. And I feel like for the last 2.5 years, we were missing some of that clarity. And now in the last year, we've gotten really, really clear on where we're going, what our mission is. And the mission's always evolving, right? When we started out, it's how can we serve small business owners better? Now it's how can we, get to more business owners with these software solutions. And we've just got this, it's such a much more clear vision that we have, but there's still so much that can go wrong. So much that can go wrong. And so sometimes I'll wake up literally in the middle of the night. And it's weird. It never happens during the daytime when I'm awake, but I'll wake up and I'll think of every bad thing that can happen. I'll think of, my short-term rentals in Orlando and what's going to happen if things aren't getting booked out. Or I'll think of, another business I invested in Vegas and what's going to happen with that one. And then I'll worry about our core businesses and all the different things that can go wrong in them. And it's so weird. But at the end of the day, control what you can control, focus on those solutions, and we can live with those results. That would be, I hope, my advice to myself, because it's funny, even just in the last few months, I still have those little panic moments, and they only happen like when I'm like unconscious, which is super weird. But when I'm awake, I don't ever do that because I'm awake and I'm proactively thinking. But boy, that's the worst thing when you literally what's keeping you up late at night, and it's weird when I like wake up in the middle of the night, and that's where I go and I think.
I have a follow-up question to that question. I never ask a follow-up question to this, but I have to on this one. Let's assume that 2028 Leo has solved it, has figured out how to control what he can control and not worry about things. What would you suspect the solution was? You said, if you ask yourself, how did you do that? What is he going to tell you?
99% focus on the solution. And focus. Because I've been one of those entrepreneurs. I think a lot of us struggle with this as entrepreneurs, that shiny object syndrome of this opportunity, that opportunity. And I've gotten much more better now lately at no, I'm not doing anything else until we get, our funding machine software up to 1,000 users. That's it. And then we're going to get our My Figure software to 100,000 users. Because of that foundation of those loan brokers, we're going to share it with more business owners. And so that clarity, just focus on that, control that, and don't worry about it. All the rest is just noise, signal versus noise. And I think I've listened, there's another podcast I've listened to, really great podcast, and he's read all these biographies of entrepreneurs. And they ask him, what's your takeaway, after going through 400 autobiographical books of all these great people throughout history? And he's like, focus. That's it. Shut everything else out and focus. So I have a feeling that's what it's going to be. Focus.
Okay, one more follow-up question because I have to ask. What is the noise in your life right now as you're saying this that you need to cut out?
It's just making sure all those other little sub-businesses that were little investments that I made, that I've got good people running them so I don't have to focus on them.
Do you need to sell them?
Yeah, maybe that.
I don't have the answers. Just curious. This has been awesome, Leo. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this.